So it is exciting times because at last, after 2 years, the second season of The Last of Us has arrived. Last time, Jem and I had a full-on conversation series going through every single episode, and we're going to do the same this year, but with a slight twist. This first two-episode conversation will be coming out as an hour-long special for free in our normal channel, but if you want to hear what we have to say and think on the rest of the season, you'll have to go onto our Patreon, which is patreon.com/gaming system. So that's where the rest of the season will be. So, to start off with, we'll start from the beginning. The very first scene, I believe, is actually Abby and her friends at the hospital around the graves. First off, it's a shame to start on a negative point. I think it's terrible cowardice that they didn't get a really bulked up actress to play Abby. I think that was such a cowardly move. They didn't even make her. She's good, but they didn't make her bulk up in any way. She doesn't resemble Abby in that way.
No, I agree. That was definitely one of the things that came up for me straight away, actually, because even aside from her sort of physical size and her sort of fitness levels, she's more delicate. She has more delicate features, and she's shorter, and everything is smaller and more. Yeah, I am disappointed in the choice, but I'm hoping. I mean, I did go hunting online because I was like, why did they choose her? And I've got a quote here. So Druckmann said that the co-creator, obviously, said that we would have struggled to find someone as good as Caitlin to play this role because it's more about the drama. And I think that's their focus. And a quote from Craig Mazin, and another co-creator, is that there is an amazing opportunity here to delve into someone who is perhaps physically more vulnerable but whose spirit is stronger. So I think there was a real focus on the emotional story behind Abby, and perhaps they felt that if she'd been physically bigger, that would have been less obvious. But I feel that there must be thousands of talented actors out there who are not the classic idea of pretty, or who are bulked up a little bit, who could play that role. So I remain to be convinced that she was the right choice.
Yeah, at the very least, they should have got. She had 2 years to bulk up, and from the sounds of it, they decided on her very quickly to be the right choice because apparently she was Nathan Drake's daughter in Uncharted 4, so they knew of her. They know that she's a very good actress and that they wanted to work with her. And to not get her to do anything, because the problem is that she needs to be the other side of the coin to Ellie in every way, because they are both have violent hearts, as the paedophile cannibal said in the last season. And you're right. I think delicate is the right word, because I think when the problem with a lot of when they get women to do action scenes is they don't choreograph it in a way where it looks like you could push them over. It looks like you could go up to Abby and just shove her and she'd fall over. Whereas with game Abby, you wouldn't go anywhere near her, because one thing, her hands are fucking massive. And if someone's got massive hands, you don't screw with them, because they're just look like they're ready to beat the shit out of you. And Ellie, the point of Ellie is that she's the one that does everything fueled. Everything is fueled by her inner intensity, and because she's really
Mm.
skinny, she's really small, and she's the one that goes through this entire city hunting for Abby, and you think, yeah, it makes sense that she can do that because of the the amount of violent intent that she can have. Whereas with
Yeah.
Abby, you're meant to go, she's got she hasn't got that. I don't know if she hasn't got it. She needs that physical power in order to do the things that she wants to do. Whereas Ellie just needs the
Yeah.
intent.
Yeah, and Abby's supposed to be military. You know, there's supposed to be that military background. Now I know that. I mean, the point is that this is 5 years later that she's found Joel. So obviously, in that first scene, that was just after everything had happened. But she's had 5 years of being focused and being driven. And in the game, I know that one of the reasons, because they had to justify her size, her bulkiness in the game, because there was people who didn't like that. But the justification for it then was that she is driven by this need for revenge, and so it has like trained herself up to be able to do the task that she wants to do, which is to find Joel. And so it makes perfect sense, because that is she comes from this military background. And yeah, I think it's really strange. It's not strange that they necessarily chose this actor. I don't think that's a problem. But why not? Yeah, why not get her to bulk up just a little bit? Just to have done a couple of like bicep curls or
Yeah,
something. I mean, I know I'm not in a position to like judge anyone else's fitness levels, but this is a character who was striking for their visual appearance in the game, and they've completely. But it isn't just that, because there's a scene when her and her friends are in, and Abby and her friends are in the lodge at the relatively near to the beginning of the first episode, and she's talking to one of the guys in the group, and she sort of says something to him, and she's almost asking for his approval, which again sort of I felt undermines the fact that Abby doesn't give a shit about their approval. She wants them there because she needs people to help. And I felt that came through later. There were more times later on, certainly in episode 2, where she pushes back against them. But it was just in that first episode, I was like, why is she deferring to this guy who doesn't even seem to have like, he's not got a role, he's just part of her gang. And it felt like, is she the leader, or is she, at that point it felt really unsure. So I just felt like, are they going too far down that route, to making her too vulnerable, too submissive, and yeah.
yeah, definitely. It's that, yeah, that delicateness, that feeling of
Mm.
as soon as you I remember so clearly the first time you take control of Abby in the game, she just jumps down from something, and all of a sudden she's this great big hulking back, and you go, Jesus Christ, I've never seen anything like that before. And she is reckless. We'll come on to the
Mm.
recklessness of particularly Ellie is really interesting, because we'll get onto that in a moment. But the recklessness of Abby knows that she can kill clickers with her bare hands if she needs to.
Yeah.
You just take one look at her back and you go, this person can probably like you just go, they can probably deal with whatever happens.
Bench press a lot.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah, and you just it's
Yeah.
that's like if you look at like any man, if you look at see a man that was built like she is, you'd go, oh yeah, her walking off into the forest in a snowstorm on her own. Of course, why would she bother with that? Whereas this one,
Mm.
she she's as reckless going out in the snow like that, but it just feels like they're indulging her. They're they're going along with
Mm.
what she wants, but then Owen, because of course Owen, he looks like a fucking douchebag, just like he is in the game. He's the worst character. Everything is his fault, and because they all go along with her, but none of them believe in it as much as she does. It's like they want to, which is, and all of it is so. I have no idea what they're going to do and how much they're going to change when they get back to Seattle because of the way that they've built up the dynamic between these characters and things they say.
Yeah. And the fact that they're telling Abby's story up front.
Really quickly, yeah.
I mean, in the game, it comes out over time. So you meet this person and you don't even know why she does what she does to Joel, and you don't it just happens, and you don't know who she is or what. It's a lot of what happens doesn't come out until later, and it's almost like they they have said that one of the things is that they wanted to create more empathy with the character, and I get that, because it was horrible to play Abby, and we knew well, I knew when I played the game, I knew what Abby was going to do. So when I ended up having to play her, that's hard, because like I like Joel and I don't like what happens to Joel. So you feel almost like you're betraying you're betraying Ellie by playing Abby, by having any kind of connection with her. And so, but at the start you don't know that. You don't really know who she is or what's going on or anything. So they've kind of told the story a lot up front, and I think that's quite interesting as to what impact that's going to have going forward.
Feels Yeah, it does feel a bit rushed. It feels like a bit we've learnt a bit too much, perhaps, so quickly. But then
Mm.
that gives them more. They can tell a different kind of story going forward if they
Yeah.
reveal this earlier, because yeah, we have no idea what the shape of the next, because they said that the the story of the second game is going to take 2 seasons to tell. So, and we're still in Jackson in the second episode. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see what their plan is. Yeah,
So with that in mind, what did you think of Jackson? Because because in the game, when you have the like 5 years later, it just basically flips to it, and you're just Ellie and Jackson, and so you see it all from a ground view. But in the show, you kind of do this pan in and you see this bustling town. So it was very different, kind of gave you a broader view of the setting. What did you think of Jackson? How did that relate to your memory of it in the game?
this is part of it where them being able to expand into it and see it from a different perspective, they have done so well. Because in the game, you're restricted to it's Ellie's third person view. You only see the things that you can go past. You've got horses, you've got dogs. It just looks like a functioning community. But in this, we see that view, but then we get to see Joel in his his element, which is he's a contractor. That's what he knows how to do. And he's there in his office with his glasses on, doing stuff, and the first time you see him, I think, is when Dina comes in, and Dina,
Yeah.
they fucking nailed Dina. That
Yeah.
she just comes in and just shines, and just you just want to go, oh, I bet she's great to hang out with. She's lovely, but she's
Yeah.
also really, clearly, really sharp because all the way through the the tension between Joel and Ellie is it's so hard to watch because you just want them to hug and go, yeah, it's a bit fucked up, but it'll be okay. And we see Joel in it's so good because we see Joel in the place where he knows exactly what to do. He knows exactly what's happening, and he's able to do something to fix it. He's fixing the circuit board at the start, and then he starts explaining it extremely well to Dina. And he's in the office later on going, right, we need to build this, we need to fix that, we need to do the pipes. The pipes, I'm terrified of those fucking pipes. I have no idea what the
Again,
mushrooms in the pipes are going to be.
no, that's not all new, isn't it? That none
Yeah.
of that was in the game. But I've got some thoughts about that. I'll come on to
Mhm.
that. Not specifically the pipes, but the what happens to Jackson.
Mm.
But
Oh, it's so cool. And then Tommy comes in with the kid, and Joel is just loves this kid so much, and the kid loves
oh,
Joel.
I know that was lovely, wasn't it? Yeah.
And he says we should stop bringing people in. And then there's that that slight edge that he's always got of because we know that him and Tommy have done horrifying things in the past, horrifying enough
Mm.
that Tommy left Joel, and to have them come back and have this him being in this place, he's got that edge to just consider that, but then he's able to pull back from it, and that's because Ellie has unlocked that human the 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 human part of him that he had to crush down because of his daughter's death. And
Mm.
then we see the the other extreme of Joel where he has no idea what to do, his emotional side of him first talking to Dina, opening up a little bit, and then
Mm.
the therapy scene. What did you think of the
Yeah.
therapy scene?
I thought that was really interesting because it didn't go how how I thought it was going to go for a start. I mean, she kind of comes out with this like, "Oh, by the way, and you killed my husband, and I hate you for it." And I think it was a really, but you see, I thought that Gail, isn't it, in the therapy scene,
Mm.
and I can't remember the name. So, I mean, we'll get to it later. But there was there's in the party scene, there's this guy who basically makes a sort of homophobic complaint, I don't know,
Slur?
comments at, yeah, slur, yeah, at Ellie and Dina at the New Year's Eve party. But then the next day he apologized, or yeah, the next day he apologizes to her in a very genuine,
Mm.
actually, I felt it was a really well acted scene. But anyway, so he apologizes to her, and and then you've also got this scene with Gail where she says to Joel, you know, you come in here with your shit and your crappy problems, and you know, you've just got a teenage daughter being a teenage daughter. Now, we know that there's a lot more to it that obviously Gail doesn't know, but she doesn't know that. And at this point in the story, we don't know why Ellie is behaving the way that she is. So yeah, but and then she's like, you know, you put my husband down, and I know you had to do it, but it I hate you for it. And then she says, but I'm ashamed of that. And now that it's out there, now that it's out in the world, it has to be dealt with, and I can start making amends. I can start dealing with it. Which, I mean, there are so many layers to that whole thing, because of course she's saying she's underlying the whole thing of the story, which is that there's this secret that is fucking everything up for Joel and Ellie, and for everyone really. This secret there, and the lack of communication, the relying on anger. I mean, basically, she's laying out the story for us in that like tiny little scene, and I think most people won't realize that until they get to the end of it, or if they've played the game, because that doesn't you wouldn't know at this point how key that is. But it's there's an actual, it's a technique, you might know this, there's an actual technique, it's a technique for writing when it's called like prescience. But basically, when a character basically does that, lays the story out and says it's a technique, a writing technique for audiences, because it's a way to kind of put that idea in there, get you in the right frame of mind for what you're going to see. So it's a sort of like, yeah. And I think it was done really, really well. But to link it back to the other guy, I just felt that those two scenes, along with how bustling Jackson is and how big, I mean, it's massive compared to the one in the game. It was like 4 times the size that I imagined Jackson to be. And because in my head, it was like a tiny little community. But yeah, so it's this big thing. But I just felt that all of those things set this idea up that Jackson is an example of all the good in humanity, of people working together, people wanting to be better, wanting to be good, which is a great backdrop for this drama that plays out, which is all about revenge, all about violence, all about hurting people, and all of that. I think it's a really interesting kind of juxtaposition. But I think Gail's conversation with Joel was inspired, and the more I think about it, the more I think it was very, very clever, actually.
It's such an unconventional way of approaching a story like this. Was in the game, it is, I remember saying very clear, and I've thought this since I'm playing it, a couple of conversations would have solved all of this if they'd spoken to Joel and Ellie before they took her into surgery. If they should have, or they could have just shot Joel and then everything would have been fine. If Abby had just said in front of Ellie, "Oh, he killed my dad," or these tiny little bits of dialogue where we got going, "Oh yeah, it could have been fine." And this, she's just going, "Oh yeah, you just need to rip this open and say the unspoken things, and then you can start dealing with them." And because they don't rip these things open and do the unspoken things, that's why all the bad things happen. And
Absolutely.
I was found, so it was Seth, the old guy, who called them both dykes.
Yes.
Which is just I remember that being like a slap in the when I played it, because just out of nowhere going like that. And I remember
because it was such a romantic scene, and then that happens, and that's
it was and that was we'll come on to that dance scene as late, because then that just the chemistry between Ellie and Dina is, they couldn't have chose that more perfectly. It was fascinating because I remember the game, I can't remember her name, the leader, forces Ellie to go and take the sandwiches from Seth, and Seth says sorry, and she says okay. We'll remember it. We'll remember it at some point. And he just goes, "Yeah, okay, I'm sorry." She goes, "Yeah, okay, that's fine." And then they go their separate ways. But this, it felt like Seth had done that the night before, gone to the therapist had ripped this open and gone, "Yeah, what you did was fucked up, wasn't it? And you did that in front of everyone, and you did that because of something something to do with you. It has nothing to do with them. And it felt like he did something that he wasn't happy with. He didn't quite understand why. Now he understands why. And it came through in that performance. He really felt mortified that he did that. And he felt terrible that
Mm.
he said that to them. And again, that is
Yeah.
it feels like everything else in Jackson is working. Overall,
Mm.
it's a place where something happens and it gets resolved as part of the community.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. And that they're people who want to work together. They want to make things better. They recognize that they are better together, which is in juxtaposition to the hurt people thing going on with everyone else, with the main characters. I mean, one of the things that when I was sort of thinking about this, one of the things that came up was that Jackson is supposed to feel like home and safety to Ellie. It's supposed to represent that, and it clearly does in the show. But I was wondering, do you think that I mean, maybe that's getting ahead of ourselves. But do you think that the size of Jackson being so much bigger in the show, do you think that will that undermine that safety that it provides, that sort of secure base that it represented in the game?
I think that the way that they're showing it this in this way is to provide undeniable proof that things can be better. There is a way for things to be okay on a larger scale, because it's okay. Things can be okay in a small community for a short amount of time, and then you see somewhere like all the places that they went in the first game, and then Seattle in the second game, just these dystopian nightmares where everything is bad and it's only going to get worse. And then people like Ellie and Abby can go, well, this is the world we live in. It's a world of eye for an eye, revenge and violence and bloodshed. And Jackson is just there going, yeah, we're fine. We can, as we find out in the second episode, they can survive the most extreme thing that can happen. It'll be difficult, but they're able to do it. And then that's just going to make what happens later on much worse, because we'll see. Well, there could have been another way. Right. So we've gone for nearly half an hour without talking about Ellie. We'll talk about Ellie. Her first scene. Well, we have the scene from the end of the last season where he says, oh, I've told you the truth, and she says, okay. And then the first scene we see of her is beating the shit out of that guy who's like a foot taller than her.
Yeah, that was an interesting start, wasn't it? Because, yeah, I was kind of like, what's she doing? And then I realized, like, but it was quite a long scene before it's clear that it's, training.
Yeah, it was very. Yeah, I was just thinking, well, what the hell's going on? And she actually looks like she could probably take him down. I thought that's the way you need to have someone who is so much smaller than ever, because she knows that she's never going to be big. She's not going to get any taller, and she's not going to get massively strong, but she just wants to be able to feel like she can take on anyone that comes along.
She's like a scrappy little dog, isn't she? That's really how I see Ellie, and certainly Bella Ramsey's Ellie. I think that yeah, because she's a little bit so. Bella's Ellie is a little bit more, a little bit cute, more cutesy than Ellie in the game. I think a little bit smaller than Ellie, a little bit more fragile than I think Ellie in the game is. Like young Ellie, Bella was spot on for, but the older Ellie, yeah, I think, but I think Bella has managed to carry it off brilliantly. I think they've done such a good job with the role. It's really impressive.
Yeah, I think the the range, the emotional range that we see from TV show Ellie is it's because it doesn't have to be action and fighting all the time. You do get to see that when she is softer, she's much softer. Like when she's talking to Dina, she's normally still got like that wall up, but she lets it down a lot more when she's with when she's with her friends. It's very sweet. But how reckless she is so disturbing because
Mm.
she says Jesse says that, oh yeah, if he hadn't pulled that punch at the start, he would have knocked you out in the first punch. And she has this false sense of strength in lots of ways, as is shown perfectly when I think it's in the first episode when Dina and Ellie go into that supermarket
Yeah,
and they think
and through the roof. Yeah.
and finds this that stalker was horrifying and
Do you remember? Was the stalker in the first game? I remember that scene from the game, but was the stalker in it?
no, the stalker came in much later
I hated the stalkers. They're so horrible. But yeah,
and it just
that. I do remember that game. That scene in the game.
it just showed that they're not ready. They are not safe. They are not ready for everything that the world can happen because that's the way Ellie feels. She says, "Oh yeah, I'll be fine," and she got bitten again,
Mm.
and that's just proof that something she didn't expect happened, and she lost.
Yeah.
If she'd been anyone else, then that would have been it. Would have been over.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was that's a really good point to make actually about her recklessness. I mean, they'd already sort of said, "Oh, you know, you went off and you did this and you did that and that's why you can't be in this, thing." But a lot of the focus seemed to be more on Joel worrying about her and her being annoyed about that. But I think you're right. I think the how reckless she is, how careless about herself and her own safety she is, I think is also they're also setting that up quite well. She doesn't have a death wish. I don't think Ellie has a death wish at any point
No.
in it from the games, but she also doesn't have any sense of life preservation. It's like she just doesn't care. She cares about the people that she cares for, but her own life has little, seems to have quite little value to her.
It's really
But I don't know if that comes from, like, if that comes from I mean, what do you think? Does that come from an arrogance that because she doesn't have to worry about getting bit, she's fine? Or does it come from she's got nothing to lose. She's got nothing. She's got a lot to lose, but if she goes, she doesn't recognize the value that she might hold to other people.
yeah. I think it's such a she doesn't know where she belongs, and
No.
knowing that she's the only person in the world who's immune, I can't imagine the impact that would have on you. So
Mm.
I think that feeling of she doesn't have much to lose, she doesn't think she has much to lose, but then when she's angry, she doesn't think as much, and when she's on her own, she doesn't think very much, and it really felt like she needs her friends around her to to rein her in to be the voice of reason that holds that will keep her safe enough and to stop her making the most extreme decisions. Whereas when what happens the next episode happens, we'll go into what happens when these people who are meant to be the voices of reason become the people like Abby's friends, where they go, oh yeah, we want the same thing that you want and we'll help you get that. Should be really interesting. I think, was there anything else in the first season? In the first episode?
No, I think that we've kind of covered most of the things that's jumped out at me. Oh, I did think that they, because in the game there is Joel and Ellie has start to work towards patching things up in the game before what happens at the end of the second episode happens. But in the show they didn't have any of that. So it's I don't know if that makes it, I was thinking about, does that make it more or less traumatic that, you know, that at least in the game there was an element that they were trying to sort things out, but as it stands in the show, Joel thinks that Ellie's angry with him but doesn't know why, and you know, it's left very sort of open.
Yeah, the one thing I really like of what they've done is that, so in the game you don't find out that the very last thing that happened between Ellie and Joel was them making up on the porch, and then that's why she can't let it go. The first thing we see with two of them, like the big thing, is at the dance when he pushes Seth out of the way and she goes, "What is wrong with you? I don't need your fucking help." And that properly, and you go, that's the last thing we see before Joel gets killed. And so so we don't fully grasp why Ellie is on this path of vengeance. It's because after 5 years and all the stuff that we've seen, they finally went, oh, they both went, oh yeah, we're going to be okay. And Ellie goes, I'm going to be okay. Me and Joel are going to be okay. And as long as we're okay, then that's the thing that she'll take care of herself so that she doesn't lose that. And at the start of we'll move on to the second episode now, because this is quite a good smooth transition into it, is when Jesse comes to take Ellie to go out on patrol. This is a fascinating decision to swap the patrol pairs up to what they were in the game. And Jesse's saying, right, you're going to go with this person because I thought you might want to avoid Joel. And she goes, you know what, I'm just going to go with Joel. And you go, And then he goes, oh, are you sure? And he goes, look, Joel's Joel, I'm me. That isn't going to change. Our stuff is complicated, but we're going to be okay. And that's not something we find out until the very end of the game.
No, that's true. Yes. I'd forgotten about that.
Yeah, and that's I think in the show, knowing that at the start is a much better place to put it in the plot. Because we need to, just like with the problem with them doing the same thing with Abby right at the start as well, it sort of puts them on even moral ground right at the start.
Yeah.
Whereas in the game, for the first 12 hours, all you know about Abby is that she's violent, aggressive, reckless, cruel, vengeful, spiteful.
Yeah.
There's another word. Just her, so brutal. Joel saves her. He goes, I saved your life. He literally ran up, picked her up, saved her. that's what, and all we know is that she took all of that and then she beat him to death with a golf club.
Yeah.
And so we hate her
Yeah.
because we've spent the entire first game with Joel,
Yeah.
and also he's Pedro Pascal. That
Yeah.
adds a
And
huge amount to
we
it.
all love Pedro Pascal. Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So it was an interesting choice, really. Yeah.
yeah. So we know that Ellie at the start is going, oh yeah, everything's gonna be fine. It's not fixed, but it will be okay. And she goes, I want to go and spend time with Joel. And the somehow, just like with, did you watch Chernobyl?
Yeah.
They just that that radiation is terrifying. That crackling of a Geiger counter is
Yeah.
just and you can just hear it going up and up and up
Ratcheting
and
up.
up and up and
Yeah.
up. The entire sorry, I can hear some hammering outside. The entire time of the first episode, it felt like that Geiger counter was going up and up and up and up
Yes.
and up and up and up, and you have no idea what's going to happen. You have no idea who's gonna say what.
No.
And I listening to the podcast of the two showrunners and Troy Baker talking about it, they described the therapy scene as an emotional action scene. It's not physical
Mm.
action. It's this going, whoa, people fighting
Yes.
emotionally.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be action. It's just
Yeah.
got this, and this episode even more so. The mentioning of the infected hibernating,
Yes.
of them pouring out of places, the mushrooms in the pipes. And did you say you had a theory on that? You have a theory on the mushroom pipes?
Just no, just really about the threat to Jackson. So we were talking about the size of it and whether that would make it less of a safe space and less of that sort of safe haven that it's supposed to be, but also because it's so big, it's safe. It's like 100% safe. But actually, by throwing in this stuff going on in the pipes and the horde that just comes running at it, none of which was in the game, those things, I think, showed, as you said, the preparedness of these people, the fact that they only get through it because they all work together and there's no kind of backstabbing that you get in like The Walking Dead and stuff constantly, which is just crazy all the time. So they work together as a team. They all do what they're supposed to do. The people that are supposed to go in the basement go in the basement. The people that are supposed to go on the roof go on the roof. And yes, there is a moment where a couple of people leg it, but I don't blame them. And and I think neither did any of the people in the scene. It was just an example really of how the town can work together and how working together. Yes, it was awful. Yes, obviously lots of people died, but they survived it. And I think that they'd added these things in is there to provide a little bit of anxiety over the safety of Jacksonville, the fragility of this more positive future, I think, to
Yeah,
unsettle us and
just
unsettle Ellie as well.
and another thing I think that having this extraordinary siege of all the infected does, this massive battle where they had an incredibly well thought through plan. They knew they all had jobs. They all knew exactly what they needed to do. They had fire to push over the edges. They had plenty of ammunition, and even with all of that, they barely survived. They've had all this time to prepare. They had the plan, and they barely survived. And
Yeah.
Ellie fighting that stalker didn't survive if she wasn't immune. And
Mm.
the one of the most awesome bits from the first game that they got even scarier was the when Abby's being chased by the infected and she gets trapped by the fence. And it's just crawling along and going like
Oh
that.
my god, that was horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. And she would have died there without Joel appearing and saving her. Joel seeing someone who needs help, running over to them despite there being a horde there, and picking them up and saving them. And the mushrooms in the pipes, and the stalker, and the what this does is makes it clear that the world is viciously dangerous. Viscerally, it can kill you so quickly. It can overwhelm you so quickly. Whereas I think as like with The Walking Dead, the world is like it's a force of nature, and sometimes that world sort of gets pushed to the peripheries a bit because we're focusing on what the humans are doing. And because this is such the three main forces in the game are Ellie, the wolves, and the scars, and it's very easy to forget that this terrifying world is as ever present and ready to pounce on you as it is. And that just made it so much more, the stakes so higher.
Yeah, they laid it out really clearly as well, didn't they? Because they were like, here's the threat from the infected, here's the threat from however the infected spread with the mushrooms things, which I guess could grow spores and stuff inside the town. And then also here's the threat from the natural world, which was in the form of the storm. You know, that was provided a cut them all off from each other, physically was a harsh environment and put them in danger beyond what the infected may or may not do. So yeah, I think they laid all of those threats out really clearly in a really, I mean, it tripped along really quickly. I mean, we watched the first half because I don't have a lot of watching time, but we watched the first half yesterday, and I sort of checked what time it was, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, we've already watched half an hour," and I hadn't even like noticed that time go. I genuinely thought like 15 minutes had passed. So I think that they are telling it in a very, because the one of the things that was sort of thrown at the game was that some bits of it were a little bit slow, and that the story was slow at times. So I think they are working to correct that within the show, and to keep that pace moving. But I think you're right. I think they've added in things that were not in the game, but that they have underlined and underscored a lot of the elements that are important within the game and that are, as you say, easy to forget. So I think they did that really well in those scenes.
Yeah, it feels like every extra thing that they've included so far has, because we know what's going to happen generally, the big plot points.
Yeah.
So we knew that
Yeah.
I was making notes as I went through, and I just wrote, when it happened, I just wrote, "No, Joel, ow." Because Firstly,
Yeah.
I appreciate the. So in well, see what we think about this. We'll start with so it's Dina with Joel in this one rather than Tommy
Mm.
because Tommy's back at the camp, and so we're seeing Dina is pretty similar to the way she is in the game. So is Jesse, but Tommy is completely different, and I'll be interested to see how if they approach the way that they all leave to go and find Abby, because it goes Tommy goes, then Ellie and Dina go, and then Jesse go. So they're all them not working together is what causes them to fail when they could have all just gone at the same time. But that was just sort of plot armor stuff.
Yeah, I wonder about Tommy because by setting up the town to be in more danger than it was in the game, it might provide a good explanation as to why Tommy doesn't go looking
Mm,
for Abby. And also, his motivation in the game was obviously he was there and he didn't stop it from happening. But obviously, he wasn't there. He was and had perfectly good reasons for not being there and not being able to do anything. So it's almost like, yeah, they might end up with Tommy not going out at all.
yeah.
I don't know how that will impact the rest of the story. I can't remember the details. I thought I would. I thought I'd remember more of the details because it's more recent that I played the game, but I don't.
I think what is so one thing I appreciate in terms of realism is that they when they so when Tommy in the game it goes him and Tommy go in and they're stood there and then Abby shoots Joel in the leg and then they knock out Tommy. So the last thing Tommy saw of his brother was him getting shot in the leg and then he gets knocked out. And what they've done is they've got Dina there and instead of knocking her out, they give her a sedative. And then when Ellie's on the ground, they kick her in the face and knock her out in the game. Whereas this one got a brutal kick in the ribs.
Oh, I know. I hate it when they do that.
Oh,
I always feel that.
and I appreciate when something like you can incapacitate someone without them getting knocked out because
Mm.
the amount of brain damage that happens when you get knocked unconscious is mental. And in so many games, people get knocked unconscious constantly, and it just doesn't make any sense.
Every 5 minutes,
Every
yeah.
5 minutes, it's mental. So in this version, Tommy isn't there. Dina's asleep, and so no one sees what Abby does to Joel, and we don't see much of it at all either. We just see him get shot, and him falling to the ground is horrifying, and the way he's moaning and screaming is horrifying, but no one's there to see it apart from Ellie, and Ellie only
Mm.
sees the end of it. So
Mm.
all the stuff that we see and hear from Abby that explains so much, we don't see any of it. She literally just sees, and then all
Yeah.
Dina knows is that we saved her, and then they put a gun to my head and knocked me unconscious. And then I wake up and this has happened.
Mm. Mm.
And so we'll start. So that's how that scene starts.
Mm.
What did you make of that period from them arriving at the at the lodge to Joel being shot.
Well, I think when Joel says fucking just get on with it, something, and he says just finish, just do it already, because she's like going, oh, I've waited so long for this, and she's doing this sort of big
Monologue.
Machiavellian style, like, that I think I felt the same way, because I knew what was coming, and I was just like, I just want to get this out of the way, because I find the whole thing really horrible, and I was gutted that they killed Joel off, because even if he wasn't going to be like a major character in the game, I would have really liked for him not to have died. And I understand that it's what was needed to set Ellie off on her rampage, but yeah, I was gutted about it. However, I did think I had a couple of thoughts about it. One was that Joel had 5 good years in Jackson. He would not have made it if Ellie hadn't come into his life. If he had not saved Ellie from the hospital, then he would probably have died relatively quickly, because he would have just felt so guilty about it. So it is sad that he died. However, he actually got at least five years on his life that I don't think he would have had otherwise. So I actually felt like, well, maybe it's okay, because he got more time because of his relationship with Ellie, and he wouldn't have had that if he hadn't done what he did, which pissed Abby off. So that was one thought I had. And the other thought that I had is that in another story told in another way, Joel would have been the bad guy and Abby would have been the good guy.
Yeah.
Abby would have been the person that we were playing, because when she tells it, and although they're telling it earlier, they haven't really changed the story. It is what happens. So the way that Abby tells it is he just goes in on this rampage, kills all these people, shoots this defenseless doctor in the head, and then legs it with the cure to the world's biggest problem. And that's not shit. We're all like, yay, Joe, well done, Joe. But actually, we understand the reasons why he did it, obviously. And, but even Ellie doesn't appreciate what he's done. Even she has issues with it. We learn. So I felt, it just struck me in that scene, and the way that, and earlier I said about how Abby's sort of authority was undermined a little in the first episode, but in that second episode, the group that are with her are sort of uncomfortable about what she's doing, and they're asking her to hurry things up, or to whatever, and she's very clear to put them down. She's very much like, no, we're doing this my way, and you will go along with it or else. But yeah, obviously it's just gutting when she shoots him in the leg and he just goes down, and when she says tourniquet him, and you just think, yeah. On the other hand, Abby does torture him, and that's not the behavior of a good person. So maybe she isn't the good guy after.
It's again, I remember thinking this all the way through, like, the games and the seasons, and that everyone's right and everyone's wrong for the reasons that you just said. See, he took the cure for humanity, and the last person the scientist who could do it, and killed her dad, and then got to go off with his daughter and have a happy few years. And then Joel saved her. He didn't have any idea who she was. He saved her without thinking. and we love him.
Mm.
We know what he's been through. We know what happened to his daughter, and that he couldn't let that happen again. One thing that I remember thinking when we talked about this at the end of the last season, when Joel goes through his rampage of killing all those people, and there's
Mm.
something about, she says, you killed 18 men, 18 soldiers, and one doctor. And I remember thinking that killing 19 people to save Ellie, and it being 19 men, it's easier for us because that's what we've seen forever in film and TV and everything. The only people who die in combat are men. And so we get to the end of that and we think, well, Joel can still be a good person on the right side of things and have done that. Whereas if it would have been an extreme thing and a very upsetting and unsettling thing if he'd shot those two nurses as well. Because in the game,
Mm.
you can kill the doctor in two ways. You can shoot him, or if you try and walk past him, he attacks you with a knife, and you kill him with the knife. And then the nurses just stand back. And
Mm.
what would have been really interesting was if the doctor, because Joel just shoots the doctor in this one, and that's a lot more like clean and clinical. There's nothing personal about that. It's just the way he did it with the other ones. If he'd gone there and thought, right, I don't need to kill these people, I just need to get Ellie and go, and that's because that's a point. He'd
Mm.
stopped there, and the fact that you can try and walk past and then it forces you to kill him shows like that Joel didn't want to do that. There's a part of him that didn't want to do that. If
Yeah. Yeah.
the
But
doctor
that
and
doesn't
the
come through in the show, does
yeah
it?
the if the doctor and the two nurses had attacked him and tried to stop him, and he'd killed the three of them, that would have been the thing that Joel does that is truly unforgivable, that is beyond the pale, that
Mm.
would be the hardest thing to maintain. It's inexcusable, but it is still understandable, and he'd have done it,
Yeah.
and it would have been just part of his story. And then he really would have deserved being beaten to death for that. And I just feel like Abby she hasn't we're supposed to be terrified of her, and her having this monologue of explaining everything makes it lessens the impact a bit. And then her physicality comes back into it again, because I don't know if you've ever seen anyone who doesn't play golf and is really slight try and swing a golf club. It doesn't look very like very brutal, if you and that might be a reason why they didn't show as much of it. You just hear it because in the game, Abby, it looks like it
Mm.
weighs nothing to her, and golf club irons are quite heavy, and
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah.
the shot in the leg is brutal because you think, I remember the game thinking, how's he gonna, because it blows his knee off. You think, oh, how's he gonna come back from that? He's just gonna wrap it up and then he'll magically be fixed. And then, oh yeah, him screaming was horrible, and him going.
Yeah.
Another thing about Joel is as we've said, the emotional depth and intelligence of him is much more apparent. And in the game, he's very stoic and just goes, yeah, get on with it. He's not scared. He never
Yeah.
looks scared. Whereas in this, when Pedro goes, would you just shut the fuck up and get on with it? He was scared then. That really came out
Yeah.
of him. He's not just stoic there going,
Yeah.
well, I'm
He
just.
did. He was shaking, wasn't he? Yeah.
And That was just really horrible. And then Ellie, point where Ellie comes in and comes through the door and then is pinned down onto the ground. And we see Joel in pretty much the exact same position he was in the game. This bit is,
Yeah.
in terms of the way it's set up in the game, is exactly the same. But it's, and the words are similar. The only thing that's different, which I think is really interesting, is she kills him by stabbing him in the neck rather than hit him in the head. But it feels like it's an alternate universe of a different way that this same scene could happen, because it feels like even though the words are the same, the actions are pretty much the same. The way it's performed is completely different. And how did you feel the two scenes compared to each other?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think they're very subtle differences that just tilt it a little bit. I didn't feel in the game, I very much felt that she had tortured him, that she had taken a very long time to kill him. In the show, I don't think that didn't come across as much. So I think that the coldness with which the whole thing was played out was lost a little bit in the show, which makes me wonder if they're just moving fully away from that because they've set her story up so much, and that they're moving away from this cold Abby and more to the Abby that we kind of learn about towards the end of the game.
I wonder, again, this is a really odd thing because she goes, everyone agrees that there are some things that are just wrong. And that is like killing killing unarmed people who can't defend themselves. Whereas we know that the stuff that we see her do in Seattle, which is when she thinks, right, Joel is crossed off the list, everything's back to normal. The things she does there is no correlation between there being a code of some things are just wrong. And one thing I thought was really interesting was when Ellie comes in and we just hear what's happening. Abby is screaming and out of control doing that. And we just feel I feel a real hypocrisy coming from her in a much stronger way than I felt in the game at the start. And so I wonder what that's going to end up, how they're going to portray the other things that they do.
It will be interesting to see how that pans out, actually.
And then the worst bit and the best bit, Bella Ramsey's performance as she's pinned to the ground, and Pedro Pascal's performance managing to do so much when he can't move. Just lying there like that. And
just lifting slightly when she was saying, get up, and he just lifted his head, didn't he? Just a little tiny bit. And I was just like, oh.
Yeah, I think that was the point where in the game you're thinking, oh, it's over. There's no coming. He can't recover from this. And Ellie, there was again going from that, the softest softness that she was, the softest she'd been and the most vulnerable she'd been that we've ever seen, and the most terrifying and violent and aggressive that we've seen, all within that scope of things. Going from please don't do this, please get up, fucking get up, I'll kill you, you're all gonna fucking die. And Joel just being there on the floor, just watching that happen. Yeah, and the one thing I think is interesting about why Abby would have let Ellie live, because she's just done to Ellie what Joel did to her, and she knows that she spent the next 5 years trying to find him and then to beat him to death. So you'd think that her watching and listening to Ellie do that, and because Abby, if Abby was big and strong, she'd go, I'm only capable, and she sees Ellie and she sees this skinny little scrappy dog. She goes, oh, it doesn't matter. I recognize this anger and rage that you feel and you're expressing, but there's nothing you can do about it because you're all skinny. Whereas this version of Abby would look at Ellie and go, right, we're pretty much a similar build. I'm actually smaller than she is.
Yeah.
And you'd think she'd go, oh, she's going to be a problem. Better off her.
She doesn't know who Ellie is at that point, does she? She doesn't know that
No.
Ellie's relationship to Joel. She doesn't know that it's basically the equivalent of what Joel had done to her dad or any of that. She probably just thinks that, you know, I mean, Dina, it could be anyone, couldn't it? So I think but I agree. And clearly one of the guys wanted to kill her. He was trying to beat her up. But he was being stopped, wasn't he? Was it Owen who was stopping him?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is a little bit odd that they let because they didn't want to kill the rest of the group didn't want to kill anyone else, did they? Because that was the whole thing. Like when she said, like, if you tell me the truth, I'll let Dina live, and they were objecting to that as well. So I guess that's the other reason that the others that they had just come to do this one thing.
And yeah, it's another thing of Abby being so reckless. We'll finish in a moment with one thing that I've wondered ever since the scene in the game. But Abby's recklessness is her undoing, and just the way Ellie's recklessness is, because they could have spent because there was a storm, they could have spent the next few hours talking to Joel and talking to Dina, and then Ellie would have appeared, and they could have talked to her as well, and then they would have known that it was Ellie and she was the one who was immune. Then they could have killed Joel and Dina, and then they could have taken Ellie back to Seattle, and she would have found out just by chatting to him for a bit. But because Abby's so reckless, she needed to have it straight away.
Yeah.
And that interesting, she goes, I saved your life, and she says, what life?
Yeah.
That didn't feel like the Abby from the game. It felt like Abby had purpose. She had the place where she belonged, and she liked doing what she did.
Yeah.
That's the final question for today. When Joel is on the floor and Ellie's there screaming at him and shouting and being that entire spectrum of who she is, and Joel's looking straight at her, what do you think that Joel wants to say to Ellie in that moment that he's not able to say because he can't speak?
I think he probably wants to say, let it go. I think that's what he would say to her. He would say to her, don't, just let me go, because he'd had those extra 5 years because of her, and she's the most important thing in his life, and he would not want her to go off and risk her life trying to avenge him. And she does, and you know, that's the heartbreaking thing, that you know this completely ruins everybody's lives. And it's so sad because, you know, Joel had a good innings in the world in which they live.
Mm.
And yeah, I think he would have just said that he loved her and to drop it. Live her life.
Yeah.
Go hang out with Dina.
That's the thing. I think he's looking at Ellie and going, she's going to destroy herself. He sees what the beautiful things, the beautiful life that she could have.
Mm,
Because just like with Jackson, we see things can be okay. Someone like Joel
mm,
can have a good, beautiful life. It's possible.
yeah.
They've got the recipe for it. They just need to choose to walk that path. And Joel's been choosing that, and Ellie hasn't. Ellie is
Mm,
pursuing a path that will take her to the way that Joel was in the 20 years when after his daughter had died.
yeah.
That's the path that he sees that she's walking down. And yeah, I think you're right in that moment. Yeah, he just wants to go, I love you. You're my daughter. I love you so much. I just want you to just let it go. Just don't. I think he's just going, just don't. Please don't. And he just knows when, and we see her and Dina would have gotten together just like they do in the at the end of the second game. She would have found someone to spend the rest of her life with there. She would have made music and done art and built things, and we see, and Joel has seen that that's what's possible, and he just sees it
Yeah.
that it's, and I think he looks at Ellie and he knows that she's not going to choose that life that he wants for her,
No.
and then he's going to blame himself because, and oh yeah, and then them dragging and her getting kicked in the stomach. That bit was heartbreaking, and you just feel that the extra extreme of that, and the the stabbing in the neck was felt so much more visceral because it allowed them to go into that, like the sound goes away when she stabs him and you says, oh yeah, that's that. And then we just see them dragging his body unceremoniously
Yeah.
back to the
Yeah.
burning town.
I did actually really like the way that she just turned round to look back at it. I thought that was just a really nice little, yeah, really nice touch. Yeah, that was sad.
And it's only getting started.
No.
But yeah, this was really fun, and I really enjoy this, and it's exciting, and I'm looking forward to the further conversations we're going to have about it. So,
Yeah, so check us out on Patreon.
yes, so if you want to know more, we will be continuing as we go along, probably fortnightly. We'll release to our feedback on the each two episodes, and then we'll probably have an extra big special one for the finale. But all that is to come. What's going to happen with the mushrooms? What's Ellie going to do? What's Abby going to do? Ah, it's all exciting and scary. So we have been Matt and Jem, and we will see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.